Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. And if you have any questions while we're presenting, feel free to put them in the chat and we will get to those and go through the chat at the questions portion at the end. All right, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen then. All right, can everyone see that all right? Awesome. Okay, so a lot of you already know what ReSHAPE is, so I'm going to start off with just a very brief overview of SWERI and the ReSHAPE program. So ReSHAPE is a program of the Southwest Ecological Restoration Institutes, which are 3 institutes based out of universities in Colorado, Arizona, and New Mexico. These 3 institutes work together to develop, translate, and apply knowledge in collaboration, really, with partners and managers. So in 2021, in the bipartisan infrastructure law, SWERI was called out to compile and display existing data for hazardous fuel reduction or wildfire prevention treatments, as well as to compile and display existing data for large wildfires, and then to facilitate the coordination and use of all of this information and the tool that we are building. And we were asked to report on this every 5 years. We have additional reports in between those times, which are also available on our website. So what did we start with? We started with scoping. We really wanted to look at what the landscape is like. A lot of you were part of that process of understanding what data is out there, who's working on it. And from there, we moved into our action plan where we really decided what kind of tool we were going to be building and started making that prototype. Now we are in the implementation phase where we have a beta version of the Treatment and Wildfire Interagency Geodatabase that is live, and we will be showing you that later today. We also now have some research programs that we will be talking about more. And we've done all of this, not in a silo, but with a lot of different advisors. So we've worked with a number of federal agency, Forest Service, and Department of Interior advisors and researchers. We've been working with federal and non-federal economists, and we've been working with partners like NASF and all of you here today. So a little recap of the situation. There are obviously a lot of decision support systems and a lot of partners working in this arena and landscape, as you all know. But the data is not always accessible to everyone. And the federal systems of record are not super easily comparable. So what we've done is we've crosswalked the data from the USDA Forest Service FACTS and the Department of Interior's NIFPORS systems. And we are also incorporating data from states where available and working on an agreement to get more of that data going forward. So the tool that we have created is an open access shared stewardship tool that we hope will promote more collaboration and data use across the board. We've also designed this in a very user-centric way, designed to promote the platform and facilitate widespread use, especially with people who maybe aren't as familiar with GIS systems. Along the way, we are iteratively evaluating and assessing the data needs and the applicability of the tool. We are also now implementing research programs to assess biophysical effects and social effects of treatments on wildfire risk. So who is our audience? We really intend to meet the end user needs, and we have a number of different audiences. We have spent a lot of time in the scoping phase trying to figure out who our audiences are, who we're best suited to provide this data to. And so we have 3 main audiences. The first is Congress, who asked us to develop this tool. The second is land managers, but in particular, those who are working maybe in collaborative groups or those who don't have as much access to other systems where the data lives. And the third audience is researchers, those who are really trying to answer these bigger questions and need access to data. So a lot of you are probably very familiar with the existing data network and where FACTS and NIFPORS fit within that. So this is just a wire diagram of that broader system and where this data that we are pulling from lives within that. And so we spent time crosswalking the data in order to pull it into Twig, and we will have more information on that coming up. So we built the Treatment and Wildfire Interagency Geodatabase, and now we're going to give you a short demo of that tool. So I'm going to turn over the screen for now to Katie.
All right, thank you. I'm going to keep my camera off while I'm showing the live demo. All right, can everyone see that? Great. So Twig is accessible through the ReSHAPE website, which is reshapewildfire.org. And you just click on this tab at the very top, Twig Viewer. The first thing you'll see is a splash screen with a disclaimer saying that Twig is still under development and it's still in beta version. There's also a tour that you can take on the left-hand side. I'm just going to click OK. As you can see, there is no login necessary. You can just access the data. So what you'll see is it'll bring you to some approximation of your IP address. So as you can see, I'm in New Mexico. And you can, a few things about the map, you can toggle on and off the base map in the upper right-hand corner. There in the lower right-hand corner, there's a legend which you can close or open, and it's also dynamic, so it will change depending on what is displaying on the map. In the upper left-hand corner, there's some zoom in and out buttons, as well as location and orientation buttons. And then the button in the lower left, reset, will reset your map always back to this view, to this original view, if you're in the middle of a search that you'd like to clear. Over on the left-hand side, we have a bunch of tabs. The first one on the top is the layer list, and this is where we have all of the data that is in Twig. The first and most important is the fuel treatments and intersections layer, which is our database, which currently is a combination of FACS and IFPORs. Hopefully in the future, it will include IFPERs and others. To get more information about this data, you can click on these three dots and hit the View Full Layer Details. And this will bring up the full metadata, including a crosswalk of how the attribute tables, how the attributes were crosswalked and all kinds of information. You can also bring up the attribute table from those three dots, and you can, there's some different functionality like filtering by the map extent, and also you can download all of it as a CSV, geodatabase, shapefile, or GeoJSON. And finally, you can update the layer transparency, which is handy to do when you have a lot of overlapping layers on your map. So all of that functionality is available for all of the other layers in Twig. We also have wildfires, so we have current, recent, and historical, and you can see more about what that means under those layer details. And we also have a number of layers that are automatically in the map but are not turned on or visible, but you can easily turn those on. Those include the small fire occurrence data, land fire data, MTBS burn severity, and administrative boundaries. If you'd like to add other layers, you can add, you can go up to this button at the top here, and the first option, there we have a lot of preset options that you can just pick from, things that people have suggested or requested, pod, CFLRP boundaries. And you can easily just add those hitting the plus button. You can also remove them by hitting the minus, or as you'll see, they appear over here on the layer list. So you can see them here, you can turn them on and off, and you can also just remove them with the trash can icon. If the layer that you'd like is not in this list, we also have the options of adding from a URL. So you can either add a feature service or you can upload a file if you have a shapefile or other file on your local computer. All of those layers you add are just for the session that the user session. As soon as you refresh your page, they will disappear and you'll have to re-add them again. So moving on to the second tab on the left, this is the fuel treatments tab. This is where you can filter or search for fuel treatments. You can filter by funding source, and we have about 10 funding sources that we have condensed from the original around 200. We also have the ability to filter by treatment type, and this is coming directly from those systems of record. You can search by treatment name. You can also filter by treatment year and acres. And we also have options for including planned treatments and filtering the results by the map extent. So I'll go ahead and look for a treatment. So it will zoom into that treatment if you search for it in that way, and give you all the information about that treatment. And then it will provide a list of the historical and recent wildfire intersections. You can download these results as a CSV geodatabase shapefile GeoJSON. And you can also click into any of these results to see more information about that fire. Similarly, the third tab is a wildfire tab, does the same thing, but for wildfires. So you can filter by recent, historical, or current wildfires. You can filter by the incident type, prescribed wildfire or other, or by year and acres. Oops, wrong field. And so again, you will see information about that fire that you look at, and then you can click here to see the treatment intersections. This will be all of the treatments that occurred within that boundary, and they are categorized as before, the same year as, or after the wildfire. And again, you can download all of this information. The fourth tab is the Congressional District tab, and it summarizes information by congressional district. So it will come up with a summary of the district, a few graphs and metrics about the funding and treatments that occurred in that district, and a full list of all of the treatments that have occurred in that district. Again, downloadable. The next tab is the area summary, and this is similar to the congressional district, but for other types of areas. So if you're interested in a watershed, state information, or federal land information, you can choose which one you'd like, and then I'll click on this forest here, bring up the Santa Fe National Forest, hit apply. And it will again summarize all of the information in that same way with a list of all of the treatments. And it appears my internet is getting very slow all of a sudden. While this is, let's see. Let me just try that again. All right, well, oh, there it goes. So again, yeah, the graphs, the metrics, and then the list of the treatments, and the list of the historical and recent fires, all for that forest. If you are interested in an area that is not included in this, we also have a draw area tool where you can draw a square or a polygon of a specific area and it will summarize the same information. All right, I am going to skip over this one, but I'll circle right back to it. We also have a print tool, which allows user to easily print a map of an area. We have the ability to add a title, and we have some custom templates with our logos. The ability to choose the area and kind of center things, right? And some other options and then export it as a PDF or JPEG, or we have a few other options. And then we also have a share button. So whatever you're doing in the map, whether you are doing a search or just looking at a specific area, you can click this share button at the very bottom here and share this layer, and it will show whoever you share it with that exact same view that you're looking at. So circling back to this tab, the wildfire progressions, this is still, we're considering it under prototype phase. It's a little bit slow and there's a few bugs in it, so we're not fully, we're still working on it. But basically, we have been collecting daily perimeters from the wildfires and saving them to create a time series of data since beginning in July of all of the fires daily across the United States. This data is also downloadable. Although we just started it and it's not a huge data set, it's going to be very useful in the future for modeling and other efforts. All right, and then finally, down here in the lower left, we have the About button, which will bring you right back to that splash screen where you can take that tour. And then also a feedback form is right above that, which has just a few questions of what did you find helpful, unhelpful, other recommendations. And we've been asking users to fill that out. And that's the tour, and I'll hand it back to Aidan.
Great. Thank you, Katie. I will head back to the presentation then. Okay, so that was the demo of Twig, and if you have any questions on that, we would be happy to answer those at the end of this. So some of the standout aspects of Twig that we think are the most important are we are moving from the facts common attributes data set to the, to facts common attributes from the hazardous fuels data set. And Anson, who will be talking in a moment, is going to tell you a little bit more about that transition. We also have options, as Katie was saying, to download the data from Twig, as well as to upload your own data to really make it scalable to your own location to answer the specific questions that you have at your local level. And then, as Katie was saying, we have daily fire progressions and visualizations. And then something we think is really important and awesome about Twig is that we are having federal data, wildfire data, and burn severity all in one place in one tool, so that we can really start getting at that question of how are treatments impacting wildfire behavior and risk. And then Twig is open source and open access, so that any user, no matter who they work for or what questions they're trying to answer, can access the data. We have a series of other data FAQs. I won't go through all of these right now in an effort to save some time, but on our website, you can go to, on our homepage at the bottom, there is a link to all of the data FAQs, this QR code that is on the screen right now. I'll leave it up for another second if you want to go there. But some of the main questions that we get asked are, did we create the data? And the answer is no, we are pulling directly from the existing systems of record, facts and NIFPORs. How did we handle duplicates and errors in the databases? we're not editing the databases at all at this point in time. So any duplicates or other things that turn up in the data are from the existing systems of record. And then we also get asked if we are including state, private, and tribal data. So we are working on an agreement to include more state data that is in progress, and Aaron can speak more to that. And then we are not collecting private data right now. And with tribal data, we are really wanting to be considerate of tribal data sovereignty. And so we'll be happy to incorporate tribal data if particular tribes come to us and ask for that to be included. But otherwise, we will not be seeking that out. And Anson, I'm going to hand it over to you for this slide.
Yeah, thanks, Aidan. So it was mentioned previously that the treatment data that supports the Twig database is coming from FACS and NIFPORs. And currently FACS is referring to the FACS Hazardous Fuels database, which is a subset of the larger FACS Common Attributes database, which is a more complete record of all of the Forest Service activities on the ground. Recognizing that the hazardous fuels collection is focused on treatments that are intended as hazardous fuels treatments and funded with money intended for hazardous fuels mitigation, we thought it might be important to look beyond that limited set of data to other activities that may also affect fuels, but weren't thought of as a fuels treatment or paid for with fuels treatment money. And some of these types of activities can have serious effects on wildfire outcomes. So we thought it would be important to sort of expand the scope of the range of activities we're looking at and potentially include some of these additional activities from the FACS Common Attributes database. So here, this figure shows 4 examples of things you might consider treatments, but are not in the hazardous fuels treatment database because they're not coded as such. This A panel is showing a pre-commercial thin in northwestern Montana from 2023. It's a little faint, but there is definite thinning and reduction of overstory cover here in this little polygon. The other panels, B, C, and D, the change on the ground is a bit more obvious. This is from a 2017 2H shelterwood establishment removal cut in Colorado. In the B panel, C, a piling of fuels treatment in 2023 in Southern California, and D, a 2022 wildlife habitat mechanical treatment in Florida. So the changes on the landscape are a little bit more obvious here. And this is just to show an example of the types of things that you might find in the FACS Common Attributes database that aren't in the hazardous fuels database that we might want to include, especially if you're like me, if you're a researcher trying to understand management's effect on wildfire outcomes. It would be nice to know that these treatments had occurred. So this is a work in progress. And it's important to note that users will be able to distinguish between the 2 data sets, the FACS Hazardous Fuels data set and the FACS Common Attributes data set. So if they're looking at a particular record and they're wondering which data sets it exists in, they'll be able to tell from the metadata associated with that record. So I think that about covers it, and I'm happy to answer more questions about this at the end of the presentation.
Awesome. Thank you, Anson. Okay, so as Anson was alluding to, and we've mentioned before, we have some research program areas that inform Twig and that Twig informs. And these program areas are the biophysical effects program area, which is evaluating how existing fuel treatments impact wildfire. The Connect social science area, which Claire will speak to in a moment, which is advancing understanding and practice of collaborative and collective decision-making and evaluating decision-making tools. The data science program area, which is looking at what data is really in the systems of record and understanding how to integrate and visualize those data sets and understand data quality. And then finally, economics, we are partnering with the Conservation Economics Institute. I think Evan might be on this call as well, and we will be looking at estimating the benefits, cost effectiveness, and return on investment for fuel treatments. Sorry about that. Claire, this part is over to you.
Yeah, so as Aiden mentioned, the social science part of ReSHAPE is called Connect, and we are focused on broadly collaborative and collective decision making. I want to talk just very briefly about two ways that that manifests in the work that we do. So the first way is that we are currently evaluating Twig user experience. So Twig is in beta, and we are talking with a variety of potential users to understand how Twig is useful, how it could be useful, and the changes that can be made while it's still in beta. So we are talking to people across a couple study sites, evaluating Twig and giving that feedback to the Twig team while it's still in development. On the other front, one of the other things that I want to talk about is a little bit broader, and that is because we are interested in collaborative and collective decision making, we are interested in evaluating more than just Twig and situating Twig within this larger decision support tool literature. So to that end, Connect is very interested in understanding Twig as just one of many decision support tools. And in order to improve the usability and usefulness of Twig, we need to better understand what makes decision support tools useful, when are they used, and how are they used. So we have this very user experience oriented aspect with the Twig tool, and then we also have a larger emphasis on the usability and effectiveness and usefulness of decision support tools generally.
Great. Thank you, Claire. Okay, and finally, some of our next steps moving forward. Twig is really designed to be iteratively refined and improved with user feedback being collected, like Claire said, with our social science program. The user feedback is going to help us uncover barriers to data use and really improve the adoption of decision-making tools like this. And this iterative development approach is really allowing us to integrate into other efforts in a more complementary way, rather than replicating what is already out there. This beta testing is going to continue through the early part of 2025, as well with increasing efforts to coordinate and facilitate the use of Twig. And on that note, thanks for listening to our webinar, and we can turn it over to questions now. So I will stop recording.